All right, welcome back to the channel. So it is official. Terence Crawford will be fighting Shawn Porter, and a coach for Shawn Porter gave a little bit of an insight on why they think that they're going to win the fight. Very, very interesting stuff. Let's talk about that in this video. All right, welcome back to the channel. Man, I am super excited about this fight for Terence Crawford and Shawn Porter. I think that it is going to be one of the best fights of the year, and I think that it is a fight. Personally, I think that it is a fight that is very, very evenly matched. There are a lot of people that are supporters of Terence Crawford that think that Shawn Porter, think that he's going to blow through Shawn Porter. There's not a lot of really diehard Shawn Porter fans out there, but there's a lot of people that really do know and appreciate what Shawn Porter can bring to the table. So this is one of the instances in boxing where we're really going to get something that I think boxing fans have been deserving, which is a very evenly matched fight between two fighters. I do not think that this is some scenario where Terence Crawford is, a surefire winner, like, what has been the case for Terence Crawford fights in the past. And I think that Shawn Porter pretty much has already proven that he can fight at the top level with absolutely anybody. However, there was an interview that took place over on Fight Hype, and it was with the training and conditioning coach for Shawn Porter. And I thought that it was very, very interesting. He was kind of being circumspect about letting with the strategy for Shawn Porter out. But you can put two and two together with certain facts that he gives out. And I believe what they are going to try to do to Terence Crawford, and what they believe will be their advantage and allow Shawn Porter to beat Terence Crawford is Shawn Porter's work rate and athleticism and just general, just experience level that he has, over Terence Crawford. And, and I think this is something that people, we'll get into that in some, a little bit of detail in a second. But I know that there's people out of there that are just saying, yeah, whatever. Anybody says that, they always say that, right? But, if anything that we saw this last weekend, will tell you, it's like specifically the fight that took place between Anthony Joshua and Alexander Usyk, is that, you can't really judge, you really can't judge everything based off what, off of pride, of what you've seen in the past or what people's expectations are, for a fighter. Anthony Joshua was supposed to win that fight, all the way out. They're supposed to be, going to go out there, going to stop Alexander Usyk. He was too big and all of that. And you saw, a better fighter, take over and win the fight. And in this particular instance with Terence Crawford and Shawn Porter, I'm telling you, just like I told people with the Alexander Usyk fight, do not be surprised if Shawn Porter is a lot harder to figure out for Terence Crawford than anybody else has been. And that's the point that was communicated by Larry Wade when he talked about, well, first of all, he said a couple things that I thought really struck me as interesting. He said first that he believes that Shawn Porter is actually a better athlete than Terence Crawford. And that Shawn Porter is the type of guy that it really didn't matter what sport he played. It could have been basketball, could have been football or whatever. He would be very successful out of that because, in that sport, because he's an A+ athlete. And I think that that is true from what I've seen in boxing, especially from like the Errol Spence Jr. and the Errol Spence Jr. fight that he had. His ability to move his feet and get out of, get off the ropes, something that other people had not been able to do against Errol Spence Jr. really did contribute to him having a much better fight than people, thought. But Errol Spence Jr., that constant pressure, the high work rate, Shawn Porter was able to stay there with him right through that, very, very high work weight, the high output. Errol Spence usually, when he gets in there with somebody, can break him down. And Errol Spence Jr. is also a very, very good athlete, but he can usually keep people right in front of him, right? Cut off the ring on him and beat him with, just the fact that he's in such great shape and that he has such a high, output. But he was unable to do that with Shawn Porter. And if you look at Terence Crawford and how active Terence Crawford is, typically in fights, you'll see that he throws between like 20, 30 punches around. He's not somebody that is always, that really has a high punch output. And, so therefore he carries his power into the later rounds. The question that Larry Wade had, and I also have, and it is what is going to happen with Terence Crawford if Terence Crawford is really forced to fight every minute of every round. And that is something that Shawn Porter has done in the past to pretty much everybody that he's fought, with the exception of a couple guys, maybe not Alexander's, but Yordenis Ugas. Yordenis Ugas was really trying to press the action on him, and he was fighting more on the outside. But you just see really tremendous, conditioning on Shawn Porter, and, a tremendous work rate. So, a guy like Terence Crawford, who's maybe used to throwing 20, 30 punches around, what happens when he gets in there? And this is what Coach Larry Wade said. What happens when he gets in there with a guy that's throwing, 50, 60 punches around, and you really have to keep pace with that, right? And that's always the assessment that I've had with Terence Crawford, as it relates to when he would fight Errol Spence Jr., right? Because Errol Spence Jr., people say, it's chess, it's not checkers. But, whenever you see a guy that really has a very high output and versus a guy that is, kind of like more like pot shotting and picking his shots, kind of like a Marcus Maidana versus for Floyd Mayweather Jr., judges and fans will look at that activity, and a lot of them will give him credit for a lot of activity, even if the punches aren't necessarily landing. So that's something, that Terence Crawford really has to worry about, or has to, focus on, or maybe pushed to have to deal with when he fights Shawn Porter. And then obviously the other thing that he brought up was the experience level that Shawn Porter has. And that's I think that's probably the biggest gap between the two, is the experience level. Now, they may have equal number of fights, have the same, be around the same age. I think Terence Crawford is actually a little bit older than Shawn Porter, but they're definitely contemporaries and have around the same amount of fights. Both of them have over, I believe Shawn Porter has over 30 fights. I know Terence Crawford has over 30 fights. So they're both very experienced in the number of fights that they have. But Shawn Porter is more experienced at welterweight, fighting guys that are really considered to be top-notch fighters, like the Kell Brooks, Danny Garcia. Pretty much just name all of them, right? He's had all of those different high-level fighters in there with him and been able to learn and adjust, learn things, win or lose, but learn things in all of those different fights. There's a saying that, you either win or you learn. And, I do believe that that's the case. Like, there's guys like Marco Antonio Barrera, who lost to Junior Witter, and, wound up, after he had those back-to-back losses with Junior Witter, he wound up being a better fighter because he learned and he made different adjustments. I personally think the Shawn Porter that fought Yordenis Ugas and fought Errol Spence Jr. is a better, more well-rounded fighter than the guy that lost to Kell Brook. Because when he fought Kell Brook, I think he was still kind of like in his mugging, trying to rough you up mode strictly. And Kell Brook was able to grab him, hold him, push him off, and then, and pretty much won the fight. Where if Shawn Porter would have been boxing on the outside more and kind of mixing it up, it was a very close fight. He may have been able to pull it off, right? So I think that is, one of the things that the things that Larry Wade are saying is what really makes this fight between Terence Crawford and Shawn Porter very, very interesting. I certainly hope that we get to see a really good fight. I hope it's, I hope that I'm not wrong. Now personally, and I got to say this consistently, I picked Terence Crawford to win the fight. I do believe that, he's the better all-around fighter, but what they say, you have to get in the ring and show and prove. But anyway, that's my take on the matter. You let me know what you think in the comment section. And with that, I'm out. Peace.